Hello and welcome to the final episode of Faith's Fun Adventures. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm your host, Faith, and today I took a solo trip to the Bailey Matthews Shell Museum. I know these trips are supposed to have guests, but I needed a day to myself, and what better way to spend the day than looking at shells. This is actually just what I needed because I grew up collecting shells on the Jersey Shore. Obviously the shells down here are way better, but it brought back those fun memories of my siblings and I running down the beach with loads of shells in our hands. In the United States, shell collecting was first becoming popular in the early 20th century when wealthy Americans began making their way to Sanibel Island, which was, and still is, known for fishing in shells. In 1906, Sanibel began hosting annual shell fairs where guests competed to have the best collections. The first town-wide fair was in 1927. The popularity of shelling only grew from there. Military servicemen from World War II would return with tropical shells, making shell collecting one of the nation's fastest-growing hobbies, so called by the Washington Post in 1956. Beginning in the late 1950s, R. Tucker Abbott, an American malacologist, which is a scientist who studies mollusks and shells, published a number of books on shells that helped turn Americans' shell-collecting hobby into what the New York Times called an organized mania. Collecting shells remains a thriving activity in southwest Florida, attracting many visitors to the region. The Sanibel Shell Show, run by the Sanibel Captiva Shell Club, continues to be the largest shell show in the country. I didn't know there were shell clubs, and now I know what my friends and I are going to be doing when we retire. Every time we go to the beach, no matter which beach, we always go for what we call a shell walk. It's pretty self-explanatory, but we'll walk and collect shells. Sometimes, though, we'll walk miles and miles until we've made it to the next set of public beaches. We think it's a lot of fun. These are my particular favorites to collect as they come in so many different beautiful colors. Scallops are what I find most of, but I don't mind because look at them, they're gorgeous. The shell colors displayed in this case are natural. Some scallop shells have valves, which are just equal halves, while some have one flat valve and one bowl-shaped valve. Scallops are known for their complex eyes, sophisticated vision, and the ability to swim using jet propulsion. No other group of mollusks are represented better in the diverse field of human endeavors than scallops. For thousands of years, people have harvested scallops as food, but the balance and symmetry of their shells has also led to many cultures using them as decoration, in household objects ranging from silverware to furniture, and as symbols as heraldry and religion. It's been clear that there's been lots of habitat loss for these creatures, as not as many have been turning up in recent beach trips. Development, agriculture, river damming, and pollution are just some of the human activities that can destroy ecosystems and deplete resources needed to support wildlife, leading to habitat loss. Significant habitat loss can cause population reductions and even extinctions of land, freshwater, and marine mollusks. Most mollusks are more vulnerable to changes in their environment than animals such as fish, which can move rapidly over long distances, migrating to new habitats as needs arise. The mollusk species is at a higher risk than in those smaller restricted areas like freshwater springs, islands, and narrow rivers, where human activity can be particularly harmful. But habitat loss remains devastating to all mollusks, from land snails living on small islands to river-dwelling freshwater mussels, to the rich diversity of species populating coral reefs worldwide. Speaking of worldwide, a lot of well-known structures across the world have been built similarly to shells. The Great Mosque of Samarra in Iraq is named the Snail Shell Tower due to its uncanny resemblance to a snail shell. The Château de Blois in France has a spiral staircase that is inspired by spiraling gastropods. This staircase is being compared to the Charagra spider conch with its stringy-looking internal structure. The next photo over of the wall is actually Castillo de San Marcos, which is a fort in St. Augustine that has been constructed by natural coquina shell blocks. Then in the top right, it's very clear to see that the Zhuhai Opera House is designed after a scallop. Back over to the bottom left, we have the Guggenheim Museum in New York that seems to have taken shape from a green turban shell. The tops of Greek columns are known as volutes, which are a type of shell. This particular column is clearly inspired by a nautilus. Apparently, opera houses like to be built after shells because then we have the Sydney Opera House taking shape of a coxcomb oyster. And then we have the Oceanographique in Spain, which appropriately takes after a horsehoof clam because it's an aquarium. These guys are called leguous snail shells. These brightly colored snails prefer dense, shady woods and the trunks of branches and smooth-barked hardwood trees. They feed on fungi and lichens, and winter freezes will kill them. There are more than 50 colors of Leguus fasciatus from South Florida. Leguus snails are hermaphrodites, meaning they have organs from both sexes and are prolific breeders. They mature in 1 or 2 years and may live up to 10. Once abundant in South Florida, Leguus snails have disappeared due to the destruction of their habitats. As mentioned earlier, development, pollution, and fires are constant threats to these creatures. They live in Everglades National Park and Big Cypress National Preserve after being transported out of the lower Keys, where they are now extinct. And it's against the law to collect live Leguus snails. Overall, I honestly had a great time learning about shells because up until now, the most knowledge I had about shells was that they came from the ocean and they were pretty. So, I definitely learned a lot and got to recollect on my shell finding days. Thank you for watching the final episode of Faith's Fun Adventures.